Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back into the Elite Real Estate Podcast, where we're joined here by famous guests, and I'm super excited to get our guest in today and have her join us today. Norma Rawlings, how are you, my friend?
I am fantastic. Thank you, Jimmy. How are you doing?
I am incredible, and I'm super happy to have you in and on the camera today. So I'm very excited. We were trying to figure out how to get this thing done, and now we're able to get it done, and you're here today. So I appreciate you joining us.
It is my pleasure. And as I said, I don't know. I'm not quite your 100th podcast. So what am I, like 95th or 96? You've been at it for a while.
Yeah, yeah. So you're climbing up there. Maybe we'll have to have you come back for the 100th. For
I think 150. Every 50 or so. It's fantastic.
yeah,
That's longevity.
those
You showed
yeah,
tremendous
those
longevity in
benchmarks.
this game.
Well, Norma, I'm super excited to get you on today because what you do is very, very interesting. We talk about real estate agents a lot. Real estate agents typically don't have a retirement plan, right? We're just going to open lock boxes until it's time to not open lock boxes anymore.
Yes.
But you've discovered a way to help agents with that.
Yeah, for sure. So what happens is we start down a certain path and we find that we're good at it and we start to create some success at it, and we often never think, what is at the end of the day this going to be worth? And so I am privileged to work with entrepreneurs every day, which I know you thoroughly enjoy.
Yes.
And it means that I can help them actually turn their business they've created over all those years into value at the end of the day. Because when you have a roster of agents, a team, a brokerage, you're creating value that someone else can benefit from when you're ready to exit. So that is one of the things that I do, and I do it with great pleasure. It's as I say, it's a privilege to help business owners and entrepreneurs who've spent their life creating a business figure out how to monetize it when they no longer want to run it anymore.
Yeah, and it's an incredible thing because I've had this conversation. My wife is a dental hygienist, and the dentist she works for originally retired. So a new dentist bought the practice, and then that's when it kind of hit me like he's just buying the data, right? He's just buying clients. He's buying a business, but then I was like, oh my gosh, that's real estate.
It's so true. And what's interesting about it is, if your agents are sticky to you and you have some systems in place and some processes that let you repeat cash flow year over year, which any successful brokerage typically has to have, or they go to business, within the first couple of years, then that's exactly what you're selling. You're selling repeatable cash flow, just like your wife's dental practice, right? It's like she sees that repeatable cash flow that was sold from one dentist to another.
Yeah, yeah, and that's when it really like sparked in my head, like, wow, this is what we can do with real estate.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And it's all about what is of value to the buyer, right? What does the buyer of a real estate brokerage look for? And what they look for is uh, sticky agents, right? Agents that will transition with you, because typically, Jamie, if you're selling, you're going to have to stick around for at least 6 months, maybe 12, to transition the agents over. So you look for that loyalty, but you also look for, is there stable cash flow from this group of agents year over year? Because if there is, the buyer will pay the seller for that. And so it's a nice legacy to think that, yes, it's earned me a living over the years, right? So hopefully it's provided more money than your expenses, but also that it's going to provide you with a capital payout when you decide that you no longer want to run the brokerage anymore.
Yeah, yeah, and for most real estate agents are just operators. We just get in, we do this business, but you have an MBA, you went deep into the real estate. So what does having that legal mind for you do when you're sitting across that table from that broker who thinks their brokerage is worth double than what it actually is?
So when I went to law school, I was amazed at the arrogance of the law students right out of the gates, Jimmy. Like, it was one of those situations where you walk in and you go, these kids are all like 22 and they think they're all that. Whereas when I went to get my MBA, totally different personality type, much more engaging and humble and business oriented and excited and enthusiastic. So I actually have phenomenal friends from when I did my MBA, and I don't have any friends from when I did my law degree because of the difference in personality, which is, I mean, it's the stereotype sometimes is accurate, right? But what I find is that the legal training coupled with the business training allows me to sort of look at your real estate brokerage, somebody's real estate brokerage, and say, okay, this is what we have to do in order to create a compelling package for a buyer that they are going to see the value, they're going to pay you for the value, and they're going to be able to succeed with what you have built. Because a lot of it is, you think about all the time and energy you spend building your practice. There's a legacy there. You care about your agents, you care about your clients, you care about your community. It's obvious, right? The investment that you make into the Detroit area. And so you want to find a buyer who's going to continue that legacy and not just dishonor it by dismantling it or being disrespectful to your agents or not continuing what you've built. So it's a lot of, finding the cultural fit and finding the right buyer who has enough cash to pay you money on the, upfront, and you need to be able to trust the buyer that they'll pay you out over the next few years, the remainder. So I think the law and the business together help me analyze that better than if I did not have the law and the business degree. But again, I thoroughly enjoy working with entrepreneurs. There's no group of people that sees the world the way entrepreneurs do, right? Like a salesperson or entrepreneurial mentality. I always tease, on a Monday, you can have a horrible thing happen. And most people by the Wednesday are still wallowing in how horrible it is. And you and I both know the entrepreneur's like, how do I turn that challenge into an opportunity? Right?
Exactly.
It's just a totally different mentality. And I find it very energizing.
Yeah, it is very energizing, and you're right. Like, again, as real estate agents, we have deals that just start to fall apart, right? Inspections, appraisals, whatever happens along the way. But if you don't keep that mentality, that upbeat of like, we're gonna get this thing closed anyway, we're gonna find a way to get through this. Then you can't operate that way, right? And it's like we call it operating in chaos.
Well, and if you have the mentality that is easily defeated, then you don't succeed in real estate sales. Because to your point, a real estate salesperson is always like, okay, how do we make this happen? Okay, how do we remove the hurdles, remove the barriers so that we can ensure that the outcome occurs? And it's that can-do attitude that I think is prevalent in the people who succeed in this profession are people who have that ability to look at what other people would think was an impossible challenge and say, I got this. I'm going to figure it out. I'm just going to keep banging my head against the wall and pushing until something happens, right? And as you know, sometimes you get a headache when you do that, but that's okay because you're still trying to make it work rather than just accepting defeat.
Yeah, we're gonna work our way through it one way or another. We're gonna work our way through it.
Because you have to, because anything you try to do that is sales related is it's very few of your deals, I'm sure, Jimmy, are easy, right? Like some of them are easier than others, obviously, and some of them you can't make work. But most of the time, any deal you put together, there will be challenges, and so you have to be able to work through those challenges and bring that creativity and that can-do spirit to the table to make it work. We find when we put a buyer and seller together, we're always looking for a mutually beneficial arrangement, right? So it's like if one person's winning and the other's losing, that's bad. Whereas if both people feel like their interests are satisfied or protected or at least partially met, then they're aligned to work together to make the deal happen. And that it's again, when you get two entrepreneurs together with that attitude, it's very energizing. And what happens too with the best deals I've done, the seller and the buyer on closing are telling their agents everything's staying the same and it's getting better. right? And
Yeah.
that's the perfect apex transaction where an agent says, okay, I don't have to worry about insecurity or change, but I have more referral sources. I have more leads. I have mortgage and title that are right available for me. Things that make it better for the agent. I have a larger scale. I have, an international scale or a North American scale rather than what I had before. So the sense that you can create stability and an improvement, those are the best deals.
Yeah, yeah. Like I coach and train a lot of agents too, and that's one of the things that I try to do. It's and not or,
Yeah.
right? It's and not or. If we can do this and that, and whether that's with a client, that you're selling a house, or whether that's with what you're doing at scale, with massive brokerages is different. So just like
But
a quick
you're right.
30.
It's the attitude. It's the
Yeah,
attitude of and not or. I like that. I haven't heard that before, but I like it. It's
yeah,
you're trying to do more so that your customers are become raving fans of you, right? You want them to say, Jimmy is the best guy I have dealt with in this space. You need to call him. Like that's what you're trying to achieve, is that sense that your customer is just so pleased with what you've done for them.
yeah. This is recorded too, so that I'm gonna keep that. I'm gonna clip that part out. That Jimmy is the best for you. I'm gonna clip that one out. um, but so like just like a 30,000 foot view of what you do, without getting too much in the weeds. So like, what's your valuation like? Like, how do you look at the value of what a brokerage is, or a large team, or whatever the case is, to put a price tag on it?
So it's similar to when you go to talk to someone in Detroit about the value of their house. And what often happens, I'm sure to you, is they think it's worth a million one.
Mm-hmm.
And like you just told me about that waterfront property, it's actually worth 900,000. And so you have to sort of bring them comparables to say, these are the last 10 houses that have sold in this area, and this is sort of the range. So it's the same thing with valuations. What we do is we start with educating the real estate broker as to what metrics a buyer is going to look at. And having a great desk and a fabulous location and really good branding, those are good things. But the metrics in real estate target into the last 12 months of cash flow and the number of agents you have. So when you sort of look at the whole picture, having the great brand and the great furniture and the great location, all assets. But if you're not making cash every year,
Mm,
those three things are not going to cause there to be a lot of value in your brokerage. You have to have repeatable cash flow that the buyer feels they'll be able to replicate. And so when we look at evaluation, we say, okay, how many agents do you have? How productive are they? What is your company dollar or gross margin that you generate after you pay, agent commissions, third-party brokerage commissions? So you take your gross commission income minus those things. What company dollar are you working with that you then use to pay your expenses? Because that's going to be a limitation in a sense. How much do you have to work with each year? And then you look at profitability or cash flow. How much cash flow does it generate? And obviously, Jimmy, we add back stuff like, if you're a member of the Dearborn Country Club, then we typically will say, yes, that's nice for you to have, or if you have, let's say you have Lions season tickets or Red Wings season tickets. Those are all completely fine business expenses for you personally when you're owning. But a buyer is not going to have to replicate that, right? They're just looking at your core business expenses. So any of those expenses that you run through your brokerage get added back to the cash that the brokerage is going to generate. And a lot of entrepreneurs will run through as many expenses as they can legitimately and with discretion to reduce their taxable income. What I'm looking at with evaluation is, when that's all added back, how much cash does that business generate consistently year over year? And then what I typically will do is I'll say, okay, I have to put a multiple on that. So let's say Jimmy, that your brokerage earned $300,000 in cash pretty consistently year over year. Let's say that was the number. Then I would say, okay, how many agents do you have? Oh, you have 45, 50 agents. Great. How long have you been in business? What's the reputation like? You look at all the other factors, and then you say, I think I'd give that a 3 times multiple. So that 300,000 in repeatable cash flow means your brokerage is worth $900,000, give or take. And that's sort of the metric. Is you look at about 15 different metrics, but it all boils down to, for a buyer, what cash flow can they expect will repeat for the next 3 years?
It makes sense, and you're right about about pulling comps, right, and running comps of comparables and trying to figure all that stuff out. So that's where it can get tricky because people have spent years building this business, right, and building this brokerage and building all this stuff and putting their blood, sweat, and tears into it.
Yeah.
So it does feel like it's worth more
Of
because
course,
of all the time I've
because
spent, right?
it's your third child. It's your baby. It's something that it's very near and dear to you. And it's interesting. It's interesting because we'll have some people who undervalue their brokerage. And I find that always interesting, where they'll be like, oh, I don't know if anybody wants it, Norma. It's not, and I'll say to them, look, you have, 30 years, 20 years of being in business, and you have repeatable cash flow. It's definitely worth something. So there's the one extreme, and then there's the other where, oh, Norma, I looked at what Zillow's trading at, in multiples, and I figure I'm worth at least $3 million. And you say, you have 10 agents. There's just, in no world does that happen. Even if those agents are, the 10 most productive agents in the state of Utah, you're still not worth $3 million. So you have both extremes. But what is enjoyable is, we'll often have a broker come to us and say, I'm thinking of selling and I want to know what I'm worth. And that's a really enjoyable partnership, because what I'll do is I'll put together a valuation report and show it to them and say, these are all the metrics. And I've often had a broker say to me, okay, Norma, I'm not worth as much as I want to be, but you've shown me the roadmap of what I have to work on, expense norm, like bringing expenses down, payroll and occupancy, Jimmy, are often out of whack right now, because in COVID, it all changed and we had banner years. And then as things sort of slowed down in 23, a lot of people haven't been able to bring their expenses down in line with the decrease in revenue because they're under contract, right? So payroll and occupancy are often expenses that, when I do a valuation report, a broker will say, okay, Norma, I'm going to work on reducing my occupancy cost, reducing my payroll cost, because then my cash that I spit out every year is significantly higher. And it's not unreasonable to think that you can increase that value by 50% or even 100% with changes to those expenses. Because as a real estate brokerage, it's the last 12 months that are the most relevant. So 3 to 4 years of history is important for trends, but the last 12 months gives you a sense of what cash your business is generating.
Yeah. It's a very interesting topic because, again, like, we look at expenses, like you said, season tickets and the cars and the this and the that. It's like, well, those are expenses that nobody wants the expenses. Everybody wants to know what you have coming in.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why your gross company dollar is so important. The money that you have to then pay your business expenses is a relevant consideration in any valuation. And so if you have $1 million in company dollar coming in, but you only generate 50,000 in profit once you write everything off, my job is to say, okay, what in that $950,000 that we took off in expenses is discretionary? What amount of that can be added back so that for a new buyer, it becomes cash in their pocket, and thus it justifies a higher price for your brokerage?
Yeah. I love it. And there was something on your website. So when I was looking some things up, so there's something that stopped me on your site, and it was the difference between a good deal and the right deal.
Yeah.
So talk to me about what brokers, like, emotionally get wrong when they try to sell the thing they built.
So we had a Texas brokerage. We have a Texas brokerage, luxury brokerage, great operation, profitable, incredibly desirable. And they had an offer, Jimmy, for a couple $1 million. And that was the target price that we figured it was worth. And the desire was for the brokerage to sell. The cultural fit was so off that I recommended they not take the deal. And it seems counterintuitive because they wanted to sell, they got their price, the terms were reasonable. Why would I tell them not to sell? And I said, my worry is that you've spent decades building a certain culture for yourself and your agents, and the buyer's culture is totally incompatible with everything that you value. And so, even though, yes, you could take the money and run, so to speak, when business owners build something, it's not unemotional, right? It's
Right.
a labor of love in many ways, and you want your legacy to continue. So with that specific brokerage, we're currently in talks with a different potential purchaser that has aligned cultures. And it makes such a difference because they're going to treat your agents well. They're going to respect the way your brand resonates with your luxury clientele. They're going to appreciate the premises that you're in. They're going to honor the continuation of sort of the brand personality. And that it's really interesting. Over the years, I've seen real estate brokers take less money from someone who's culturally aligned with what they've built. And I always think if the cultures don't mesh, it's just a bad transaction, because your biggest challenge is you have to transition your agents. And you think about it, if your agents, Jimmy, love you and you bring in a complete jerk who has doesn't treat the agents with respect and doesn't operate the same way you do, and it's sharp practice, those agents aren't going to stick around. They're going to leave within 3, 6, 12 months. And then you're going to have this hollowed out company from what you built. So we always look for a cultural alignment. And that applies to commission plans, right? EXP versus Remax versus like a Sotheby's, they all have a different approach to agent commission based on, the way that they sell and the type of product that they buy and sell. And it's hard to mesh two different cultures. And frankly, it makes you look at the real Remax deal and scratch your head, because Real's method of collecting commission and Remax's method of collecting commission are completely polar opposites. And the cultures within each of those brokerages are polar opposites. So I'll be interested to see how they try to create the synergies that they want with that deal, because two totally different cultures, two totally different approaches to the customer, far more productive agents under the Remax versus Real, and just a totally different perception by the general public. So a lot of, and again, way out of my pay grade, Jimmy, but you do look at it and you say, if a deal like that crossed my desk, like my Texas guy, I wouldn't recommend they do that deal.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have the cloud base versus the franchise, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know how that's going to meld together, because
No.
and maybe it won't. It's like that's two totally different aspects of what we're dealing with. It's kind of like if Netflix would have bought a Blockbuster and kept it as Blockbuster.
Right. Excellent analogy. Excellent analogy. It's the whole, so much right now, prop tech, right? So much real estate meets technology, AI. I've heard you mention in your podcast in the past. It is a game changer in many ways. It's making us, the agents who know how to use AI are more productive than the agents that don't. There's still that desperate need for human connection, though, and authenticity, and a sense of that you're genuine. I don't know about you, but I find the in-person, and it's funny, in-person stuff that I do now. So I play beach volleyball with my daughter every week. I play court volleyball. I go hiking. When you and I are outside meeting people in person, it's so much more powerful than anything we do online, and certainly anything we do with AI. So that whole balance in the real estate industry right now between personal connection and personal network versus technology. You've done a really nice job of talking about in a few of your prior podcasts. It's a live issue,
Yeah.
and Real and Remax, if you look at it, Real is a technology based brokerage. Remax is not. Remax is very much old school, the balloon, the connection to their customers. And I don't know, is it possible for those two to find a win-win? I don't know. Whenever we do a deal, we always need a win-win. We always need both parties to be getting what they need out of the transaction. So
Yeah.
again, way out of my pay grade, but at my level, I always look for that win-win, and I don't see it there.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's going to be interesting, how that plays out. And then again, we've got Anywhere buying, all these acquisitions that are
Yeah,
happening right
Compass
now.
buying Anywhere, and again, talking about complexity. Oh my goodness, how do you deal with 9 different brands, a bunch of them competing in a bunch of markets across America? It's just hard.
Yeah,
And there seems to be a reduction in leadership, right? So a lot of executives being let go because they're looking to amalgamate and create a more efficient operation. And I don't know. We have another transaction where we have a Christie's franchise arrangement being considered, and their ability to incent someone to become a Christie's franchisee way different pre-Compass, post-Compass. And
yeah,
it's hard. It's
yeah.
really hard. And you're with EXP, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
Yep.
so you're happy with that model.
Yeah, I love it. I love, it gives us the ability to, do so many different things. Work from home, work from an office, right? Just different things. And really the most important thing that I looked at was who I was surrounded with, right? And
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by the best of best. So I'm super happy because again, it doesn't matter the brokerage you work for. It really doesn't. People are going to use me whether I was with Keller. It doesn't matter what company I'm with. They're going to use me because of me. And so I look at it more as who I can surround myself with, right? And those people that I want to be around to help me push my business farther than I think it can go. And so that's one of the things that I looked at. I coach this on agents all the time. And sometimes it's not EXP is not a fit. Keller's not like it doesn't. We have to figure out where you're going to be most comfortable as an agent.
You know what? It's you raised 2 points that resonate. The personal connection that you have with your customers means that your business can go anywhere, right?
Hmm.
You can take your business anywhere because you have that personal connection, that your customers are going to follow you no matter the brand. And that is brilliant if an agent can create that sort of loyalty to themselves personally as opposed to the brand. And then the second thing you said that I think resonates is if you surround yourself by people who are exceptional, who are great at what they do. I always laugh that I want to be surrounded by people way smarter than me, way more capable than me, way
Yes.
more, people who are going to push me, because the last thing you want to become is complacent. You always want to be pushing to become a better version of what you are right now. So it sounds like it's a good fit.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. And one of the things that you wrote a piece called "Recruiting Through Acquisition," and it kind of blew my mind because people thinking about buying a brokerage is buying a building and a book of business, right?
Yeah.
But you're saying it's actually the fastest recruiting play on the board. So what does that look like?
That's really well said. The fastest recruiting play on the board. That's exactly what it is. It's if you think about how you traditionally recruit, you work really hard to try to convince 3, 4, 5 agents a year to move over to your brokerage, right? And during that same time, you inevitably lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 agents. So at the end of the day, you're either net zero, maybe up 1, maybe down 1, and it's exhausting. If instead you take that energy and you say, okay, let me look at my competitors in town. Let me look at if anybody's ready to retire, if anybody seems to be exhausted, if anybody seems to be ready to exit for whatever reasons, whether it's health issues, whether it's your wife just retired or your husband just retired and you don't want to do this anymore, whether it's financial struggles, whatever the reason you want to retire, you start conversations with, you think about it as real estate salespeople, you put a target list, right? You always have a prospect list, a target list. How am I going to approach this? How am I going to grow my business? Same thing with your business overall, with your brokerage. You say, I'm going to talk to 10 brokerages in town that I think would be a good fit with mine. And I'm just going to sit down and have coffee with as many of them as will have coffee with me, all with a view to opening the conversation to saying, hey, could we partner together? Are you looking at exiting? I'm trying to grow. If you hear of anybody who wants to sell, I'm your person. Because what you want is you want to get that call, Jimmy, from the guy down the road who says, hey, it's Lloyd and I really want to exit. You said, Jimmy, that you want to grow. Let's have that conversation because I've got 10 agents and I think they'd be a good fit with you. And then rather than recruiting 4 and losing 3, you've got 10 in one transaction. And even if you lose a couple, you're still up 8. Like it allows you to spend less time for way more impact, way more result.
Yeah. And, talking to some of the largest teams and team leaders, and I led one of the largest teams here in the state of Michigan for a while, is, this recruiting thing. You're bringing in, to us to grow by 2 agents a month, we had to bring in 10 because we were
Yes.
going to lose 8. We just knew that number.
Oh.
And so it's exhausting.
It's exhausting. And that churn is difficult to manage because there's a lot of negativity around that. Whereas if you instead say, you know what, I'm literally going to focus on buying a 20 agent brokerage, then it's a positive, right? It's an additional energy brought to your business, and it's also established. So a lot of times when we recruit, we bring unseasoned agents in, right? New agents, and try to train them, which is great. But if you're buying a 20 agent shop, you're going to already have really good producers as part of those people, your middle group, and then you're going to have a few that don't do much, but all of a sudden you're up by 20. It just, you can see the growth trajectory changes dramatically. And right now, the more agents you have, the more you're able to do for those agents because you're amortizing those costs over more bodies. And so you're able to give them more benefits as well.
Yeah. No, I love that. And it's so true because you start to look at how can I increase my business, right? And everybody says like more agents fixes everything, right? More agents fixes everything. And this is a way, instead of, again, bringing agents in, interviewing them, and if you can increase their culture, right? If you can make that culture that they're currently at even better, they're going to bring more people to them anyway because they're going to want to
Exactly.
bring their
Then they
friends in.
become that raving fan that you want your customers to be, where they're like, Jimmy is awesome. You need to come over. Because so many agents hate change. So for an agent to change, there needs to be a major problem generally. And so if their colleagues are saying, Jimmy's fabulous, you need to come with us, it's, all of a sudden you have a second pipeline of agents coming over.
Yeah. Quickly.
And they're positive about it. It's not like you have to pitch them. They've already had their 3 friends who joined as a result of you acquiring their brand, and they're already sold. They're pre-sold.
Yeah. No, it sounds so good because it does shorten that timeline of, to your point, like you said, it's you interview an agent, you bring them on, you onboard them, then you start to give them all, then you offboard them because they left and went somewhere else. You know what I mean? So it's just like this constant thing of like keep trying to keep
Churn.
everybody happy. Yeah.
Constant
Yeah.
churn. Yeah. No, recruiting through acquisition is very elegant in its simplicity. It just, the minute you understand it, you're like, that resonates. That makes perfect sense. And
it really does.
And it's nice because there's a lot of brokers looking to exit, and a lot of smaller brokerages that just can't make money in this environment unless they have scale. And those are perfect targets for the recruit through acquisition strategy.
Yeah. So onto that, like walk me through the math a little bit. So if a broker calls you today and says, "I think my brokerage is worth X,"
Yeah.
what's the gap usually between what they think it's worth and what it's actually worth?
Excellent question. So we have a process that we run. So let's say you said to me, Norma, I want to recruit through acquisition and I want to buy a brokerage with 15 agents. So what we'll do is, you have your 10 conversations, you have your 10 coffees, and let's say one of them calls you 3 months later and says, okay, Jimmy, I'm ready to sell. What we will do is we'll look at their financials and we'll give you sort of a target price for them, and we'll share it with them as well, because it's not like a listing document where you're saying, okay, well, let's try it at $9.99, but if you get $8.50 you should sell. It's more of this is what the market would look at your brokerage and consider its value. So we try to give you a range, right? So it's okay, it's Jimmy, it's going to be worth between $150,000 and $170,000. You say, okay, good to know. So then you're able to structure a transaction with that seller to maybe put, if it's profitable, maybe you put 30,000 down. You agree on a purchase price of 160,000, and the other 130 you pay out over the next 3 or 4 years. That's eminently doable, and you immediately get the benefit of 15 more agents.
Yeah.
So that's the basic transaction. Is you will all someone like me. There's about 3 or 4 companies in the space in addition to BrokerVMA. So we'll give you a range of value, and then we'll help you structure a letter of intent that again is mutually beneficial. You want your incentives aligned with the seller's incentives, and usually in this environment, very, very rare that you get money on the barrelhead. Like, very few transactions I see right now where they pay the full amount up front. It's always sort of a portion. It's always like between 10 and 33% down, and then the balance over 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Got it. And then, so if you had someone that was interested in buying, would they come to you first? Like, because there's not like a listing anywhere, right?
There's no listing. The market is very confidential. Typically, what we would do is we would meet with you on a complimentary basis and say, okay, Jimmy, what's your target market range? And you would identify, I want anywhere from 10 to 30 agents. And we'd say, okay, so then your next step is make a list of any brokerage in your community that's 10 to 30 agents, and literally reach out to each of them and ask them to have coffee. And so you do the legwork. We don't go out and find them. We have lots come across our desk. So if we know you're looking, obviously we'll send them your way if it's a fit. But it takes spade work on your part. But spade work, then you're doing one at a time. So you meet with the 10, you have coffee with the 10, you let all 10 know you'd love to have a conversation about merger, partnership, buying them, any sort of collaboration that would be mutually beneficial. And you leave it at that. And inevitably within a day, a week, a few months, you're going to get a call from at least one of them saying, Jimmy, I'm ready to sell. And it's at that point that we come in. So at that point we say, okay, Jimmy, let's figure out what it's worth, right? So we get their financials and figure out a range of value, so you know that you're not overpaying. And then we help you structure the transaction so that it's, again, beneficial for them, beneficial for you, and facilitates the transfer of all the agents. We always want it to be status quo for the agents, as we talked about. So nothing changes, but it gets better. And the other thing you want to do is total confidentiality until the closing date, because you do not want any of the agents from the business you're looking to buy getting cold feet and leaving because they hear rumors about a change in ownership. You want to have the opportunity to make them stick around over the first 6 to 12 months of you owning.
Yeah. Yeah. And then is that typical too? Like the person who buys typically stays around 6 to 12 months just to try to, ease that merger.
The person who sells, it's very rare. We had a sad one in the fall. Maryland broker, cancer back, had like 6 weeks to live kind of thing. And we ended up facilitating the sale of his brokerage, which he was really happy about, but he couldn't stick around. So in situations like that, you deal with what you've got. But in situations where health is not a factor, typically the seller has to stick around minimum 3 months, more generally 6 to 12. That doesn't mean in the office every day working full time, but it means presence seen, presence felt, touching each of the agents, with an email or a text or a phone call or a coffee or whatever over that transition period, just to make sure that they're happy, there are no issues. They're acting as sort of the transition ambassador to make sure that all the agents transition over and are happy with you as the buyer.
Yeah. Yeah, and because again, it's keeping the agent sticky to that new person then.
Yeah, it's
That's the
transitioning the
key.
stickiness from seller to buyer, 100%.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, and the model is interesting because I can see how important this is, right? How important this is. If I've built the business and brokerage for years, I want it to carry on, and a lot of times I see it a lot. Kids don't want to get into it, right? If I like, it's just like, or do you want to turn it over to your kids or not?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. If you think about the traditional succession plan, it was corralling one of your children to take over your brokerage, right? That was sort of your obvious succession plan. And if they weren't interested, you just closed the door and gave back the keys and you were done. Whereas
Yeah,
now there's all sorts of options. There's family succession still. It can be a sibling, a child, a niece, a nephew, whomever. There's management. So your management or some of your agents may want to buy. So there's that internal succession, which we're working with a group right now that they're looking at transitioning it to one of their top agents and two of their managers. Wonderful. That's a great transition. It continues your legacy. They pay you over time. You already trust them. That's great. There's sale to the third party, so your competitor, which is again becoming very common right now, and this is what we're talking about with the recruiting through acquisition piece. There's also succession where you put a general manager in place and you retreat from the business but continue to own it, because then you benefit from the ongoing cash flow without having to be there full time. Now, you have to have a certain size brokerage to do that. And then there's sort of a partnership merger situation where you find another brokerage that is in a similar situation to yours. And you say, okay, I want to spend 6 weeks a year down on Marco Island. Can you cover for me when I do that? And they say, sure, I'm a skier. I want to spend 6 weeks a year in, Whistler. Okay, great. So you merge together, you share responsibility. You're bigger as a group than individually. You benefit from those synergies and you create a partnership arrangement. And that often works really well too. So those are 5 options that in addition to, as you say, the typical, listen, kid, you got to take it over because I built it and you better bloody well continue it.
right, right. and and to touch on that piece that you were talking about, you wrote about 5 succession plans every broker owner should consider,
Yeah.
right? So here's what gets me: most brokers I talk to have 0 succession plan. Like most of them just are just doing the business. They're in the business, they're doing the business, and they've built this thing for 20 years, and their exit strategy is basically figure it out later.
Yeah.
How bad is that right now in the industry,
So
or is it getting better?
it's not bad in the sense that you and I both know when you're enmeshed in your business, it's a lot. You work hard and there's that expression about working on your business rather than working in your
Mm,
business. And you have to be aware of that before you can ever even change it. So if you're in your business and every decision runs through you, and that's what juices you about your business, like that's what sort of motivates you, great. At some point, it is probably wise to sort of move up and say, let me work on my business rather than in my business. And it's at that point that you start to think about, okay, what do I need to put in place for this business to survive when I'm no longer in it? And that's when the conversation becomes very interesting. And I thoroughly enjoy those conversations. I have all sorts of clients that'll use me as a sounding board. And so, we charge them a flat fee, and they'll be like, okay, this is what I'm thinking. And I'll say, okay, that's fabulous. These are some ideas to explore so you can create that succession plan. And that's a very fulfilling part of what I do, because if you're able to come up with a plan for continuing your business after you've gone, or after you've stepped back a little bit and maybe taken on a part-time role versus a full-time role, that is incredibly fulfilling for someone who spent 20 or 30 years building it, to see it continue and oftentimes grow in directions that you personally would never have taken it. So I've seen some really nice transitions that just are so heartwarming, in the sense of you spend so much time building, and it's so wonderful to see someone you trust continuing that legacy and building it further. It's just I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of clients use me as a sounding board for creating succession plans, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm sure. It circle back to the beginning of this, right? Like when we first started talking, where did this idea come from for Broker VMA?
So my business partner and I did our MBA together. And about 4.5 years ago, he reached out to me and said, I need you. I said, hello, Wayne, how are you? And he said, I need you right now. And so we had a breakfast, and he said, this is what's going on. He said, I'm doing broker coaching. I'm busy as heck. And all these brokers, to your point just a moment ago, Jimmy, they have no plan for how they're going to sell their business, exit their business, transition their business to the next generation, do a man. He said, and I don't have the time to help them. So I need you. So that's what the catalyst was for opening Broker VMA. And what's crazy is so he's in Bradenton, Florida, and I'm in Canada. And so we do the entirety of America and Canada. And from the time we opened the doors, we have been steady. So there's a need, and it wasn't maybe being addressed as fully as it could have been. And there's 3 or 4 other companies in this space that are all very good. I thoroughly enjoy what I do. I love helping business owners figure out how to grow or how to exit. It's or valuing them and helping them create that succession plan or estate planning device, or tax planning, so that they can eventually exit over time. So that's where it came from, is his call saying, I need you. And I think it was so funny, because we literally, he and I have been friends for a couple of decades now. And he literally was like, can we have breakfast tomorrow morning? So it was just one of those, how sometimes you get a call from a friend and you sort of go, okay, well, but 3 weeks from now, he's like, no, tomorrow.
Yeah, that's always an interesting phone call, right? I need you now.
And that's the phone call you want from the 10 people that you're going to target to recruit through acquisition. You want that call saying, okay, Jimmy, we need to meet. And you're like, okay, well, in 3, no, I need to come to my office this afternoon. I want to sell this business like tomorrow. And that's a very gratifying call, because it means that the spade work you did by meeting with those 10 people and having coffee, they're ready to go. They want to figure it out. We've had situations where we get a call saying, I can't meet payroll next week. We're like, okay, let's just take a breath and figure out what our options are and who might be able to put a deal together that quickly, so that we can assist you in, again, you never want a liquidation. You never want a bankruptcy, because it's bad for agents. It's bad for you. And frankly, I think it's bad for the industry. So it's like, okay, let's figure out how to manage this crisis. And we've had a few of those.
I can imagine, and you do see that, like with teams that are trying to expand and grow, it gets very difficult. Brokerages that are mom and pops, it's very hard to expand because of the financial backing that it takes.
Yeah.
Right. You've got Zillow's got their hand out, Realtor.com, Homes.com, real estate, all the .com.
Everybody wants a piece of you. QuickBooks. Yep.
Yeah, everybody, and real estate agents probably have the most holes in their finances than anybody I've seen, because it's a $20 prescription here, or subscription here. It's a $20 subscription here. It's $100 here. And you think in your head, well, it's only $20.
Yeah.
But if you do that 10 times, right?
You're absolutely right. It's incremental, and you don't realize the magnitude of it until you look at your credit card statement and say, how come I'm being charged $1,500 a month consistently when I never spent $1,500 a month on anything? And as you say, then you start going through all the little charges and realize that you're being gobbled away 10, 20, $50 a month.
Yeah. And we keep signing up for it, right? We keep, if this new AI platform came out, sign up for it. It's only $20 a month.
And I don't know about you, but my Claude account started at $38 a month, and now I think it's $140. So
Yeah. Yeah. And how is the AI? So I've always been a big proponent of emotional intelligence, and I coach and train from an emotional intelligence side of things. And I use AI with everything.
yeah,
It's everything. It built the website behind me. It builds everything, right? So, um, what does that look like for you and your business? How has AI enhanced your business?
it it is so much smarter than I am. And so what it helps me do is, I'll give you a really good example. If I have a client say to me, I run a brokerage in Wyoming and I want to sell. What it does is it helps me analyze who the potential buyers might be for that brokerage that are bigger than my network. So Wade and I together have a good network, but AI's network is much bigger than mine. So what I'll say to the Wyoming brokerage owners, I'll say, okay, you come up with some potential buyers that you think would be suitable, and I'll come up with some that I think may be suitable. And so an example of where I would use AI is I would use my own network and Wade's network and say, these are the buyers. And then I would say to AI, okay, this is the size of brokerage. This is what I'm looking for. Who might be a buyer? And inevitably, Jimmy, there are a couple of suggestions that AI makes that I would not have thought about.
It's a crazy thing, isn't it? Right? Like I used Claude last night. My son is a freshman in high school, and he's studying for his algebra final today, right?
Yes.
Um, and I haven't done algebra in a long time,
Shocking, eh? That we don't use it
right?
on a daily
I don't
basis.
use it on a daily basis. Now, if you want to break down money and finances, I can help you do that. But trying to figure out what X is, I don't have a clue of what you're talking about.
Yep.
But no, Claude helped me with it last night. I literally just put his papers in. I downloaded the sheets, put them in, and I said, walk me through step by step, like I'm a high school freshman. Teach me the steps to do these. And he sat down in front of my computer and was just taking notes and doing his whole thing. And he said, I feel so much better after that.
Which is, it's when it's used like that, it's a valuable and gratifying tool, because you think to yourself, you know what, AI did it much better than I could have, and yet you're sitting with your son and you're learning it together. It's sort of like the best of the two worlds, the EQ and the AI meeting. It's great.
Yeah.
I did something similar. I have my youngest daughter, I have 4 children, and my youngest daughter is 13, and she was struggling with negative numbers. So she was trying to figure out, if you add -8 to -4, what does that equal? And so we did the same thing. We sat down with AI and we did sort of a worksheet, and it walked her through it, and she would do it on her piece of paper, and then she'd check, and it was brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. It's again, it's what you're putting into it, right? So it's that's one of the biggest things that I teach in my coaching platform is the human plus, right? So I call it the human
Yeah,
plus thing, where it's emotional intelligence first, then we add the AI into it.
I
Because
like that. I
if
like
you
that. I've
add the
seen.
AI with chaos, if you're working in chaos already, AI just amplifies the chaos.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you know what else I find, Jimmy, is people don't read what AI spits out. So every single meeting, they're recording, and no one ever reads what's being written down. So why are we recording? Like there's an overuse of it when it's not as valuable. But the way I always look at it is 10%, 20% upfront is you. And then 60 to 80% is AI crunching the numbers, doing the analysis, helping you do the grunt work that isn't a lot of fun. And then the last 10 to 20% is you again, because ultimately it's going out under you. So you need to make sure that you're comfortable with what's been created and that it is authentic to you.
100%. 100%. We've got about 5 minutes left. Um, where can everybody find you? And what's the biggest piece of advice you give out to brokers or broker owners?
So I can be found at BrokerVMA.com. So that's valuations, mergers, acquisitions. So BrokerVMA.com is the website, and it has my contact information there. Advice to brokers. It's probably the awareness piece we talked about, the whole thing you talk about when you coach, working on your business versus in it, trying to remove the chaos and step above it and say, okay, strategically, what is my plan for the next 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years? And how eventually do I see myself exiting this business or growing this business potentially through acquisition? And so that, from my perspective, the moment they can move up and look at their business with some objectivity and some distance, I'll call it, that it increases our awareness of what you're building and the ultimate value it has to you, to your family, and to potentially a third-party purchaser.
I love that. I love that. It's so important, and what you're doing is um, very valuable to our industry because it's, again, some thieves will just lock the door and leave and it's over.
Yeah.
And you're giving them an exit plan and a strategy, not only just an exit plan, but a strategy that makes sense. And again, looking at the culture fit, does it make sense? All those things, because it's got to be a win-win situation, like you said earlier.
Yeah, well said. And it goes back to that, your wife, the dental hygienist, and the dental practice. If you think about what we consider having value as a company, you often think about, okay, what machinery do you have, what inventory, what real estate, right? But a dental practice is literally customers coming in the door and cash flow. And your analogy, I think, is apt. It's the same for a real estate brokerage.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, thanks for joining me. I'm gonna have to get you back on because I feel like we could do this for like another 2 hours and just
Episode number 100, episode number 150.
yeah, we'll get you back before the 150, but we'll get you.
That's impressive. That is your persistence and longevity in this industry is very impressive.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And again, thanks everybody for joining us today. Norma, thank you for jumping in with us today. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you guys all soon. Thank you very much.
A pleasure.